Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wargiven Racing podcast here on the Wargiven Racing Hub. This is episode 12, and today we will be talking about the start of another series, the American National Open Wheel Series, IndyCar. And we'll be previewing its season as well as giving my thoughts about the first race of the season, which is this week on Sunday. So, to get into it, this is the official Wargiven Racing. I don't know why it says network. That should be podcast. Let me edit that real quick. Yeah, we'll move on. Sorry about that, folks. Geez, I gotta do better proofreading beforehand. Anywho, so just some general facts about the series. This is the 27th season of IndyCar since it split from the kart series back in the mid 90s. IndyCar was originally designed to be the all-American, all-oval racing series at lower cost than kart, and it kind of has evolved nowadays into about halfway between what it was originally designed as the Indy Racing League, and what kart was in the 90s. Another fun fact, it is the 111th season of being the highest American open-wheel racing series. So before kart, it was, or before IndyCar, it was kart. Before kart, it was USAC. And then before then, it was, various different associations. But to be that old is quite impressive. Obviously, not all under the IndyCar name. It is the third season since the captain Roger Penske bought the series from, I believe it was the George family that owned Indianapolis Motor Speedway and started the IRL back in the 90s. The cars they use are spec Dallara chassis with Honda or Chevrolet engines, so there is a little bit of difference between the cars, as well as teams are allowed to modify or build certain parts. The most notable are the shocks that each car uses. They have, I believe, three basic kits or two basic kits for the Dallara chassis. They have their road and street course, and then they have their oval. I'm not really sure if they have both a super speedway and a short track or short oval configuration, but I know they at least have the two. So the defending champion is Alex Palou in the number 10 Chip Ganassi racing car. Palou was only in his second season last year when he won the championship, capping off an impressive season with a good finish at Long Beach to secure the championship. Now, granted, it helped that his main rival throughout the season, Pagenaud Ward in the Arrow McLaren team, was taken out early on in the race, and then despite his best efforts, Josef Newgarden couldn't get high enough as he didn't win the race, which he needed to do, and Palou finished high enough that it wouldn't have mattered if Newgarden did. So this season, there are 26 full-time cars entered at the moment, with 6 rookies competing for Rookie of the Year. This number will obviously probably change in terms of the rookies, but these are the full-time rookies, or at least a significant portion of the schedule. And then this is up from 24 full-time cars last season. So some silly season news. AJ Foyt Racing expands to 3 cars, with Dalton Kellett remaining with the team for his third season. And then Indy Lights champion Kyle Kirkwood joins after not finding a spot at Andretti. He had a spot, but then Roman Grosjean decided to be extremely good last year, so Grosjean kind of took Kirkwood's seat, as well as Andretti was unable to buy into Formula One, which they attempted to do around October of last year, which would have probably sent Colton Herta to F1, leaving Kirkwood his seat, but that didn't happen, so Kirkwood was out of AC and went to the went to AJ Foyt in the famous number 14. Now, Tatiana Calderon was a relatively late announcement in terms of silly season, but it was announced that she will be running all of the road courses um, throughout the year, which I believe there are 10 or 11. We'll I'll be able to confirm that once you get to the scheduled part of the podcast. But the oval driver for this car has not been announced, but there are several likely candidates that include J.R. Hildebrand, who raced last year with the team at the Indy 500. Stefan Wilson is a driver that I've seen in the news that's trying to find a seat, so he may get those oval starts. Um, and then there's some other choices scattered throughout. Sebastian Bourdais, who left the team to go full-time racing in IMSA for Chip Ganassi, may race a few of those oval races, but due to the conflict of Sebring in the Texas race, I doubt that he'll run all 5 ovals. So it's probably going to be J.R. Hildebrand, obvious, but that hasn't been announced yet. The changes at Andretti, Roman Grosjean and Devlin DeFrancesco replace James Hinchcliffe and Ryan Hunter-Reay after they had mediocre seasons last year at Andretti. Colton Herta and Alexander Rossi remain as well. Grosjean had a great season initially announced with Dale Coyne and Rick Ware to only be racing the road courses. He ended up racing at Gateway for his first oval race and impressed. And he achieved 2 podiums. Both, I believe, were at the Indy Road Course, and he also won a pole in the first Indy Road Course. So he showed impressive pace after having a lackluster end to his Formula One career, as well as that scary crash in Bahrain. So it was quite impressive to see him bounce back so quickly. And then Devlin DeFrancesco was with Andretti and Indy Lights, brings sponsorship. This was not a surprise that DeFrancesco's joining Andretti, but he's a solid driver. He finished 3rd in last year's Indy Lights Championship. For Arrow McLaren, Pato O'Ward and Felix Rosenqvist stay with a confirmed 3rd car for the Indy GP and for the 500 being run by Juan Pablo Montoya. There's been rumors, though, that another driver will take over for most of the remainder of the season. I know Stoffel Van Dorn and Nick DeFries did testing at Sebring for Andretti, or was it for Arrow McLaren? It might have been for McLaren, and I think Meyer Shank, I believe, were the 2 teams that they tested for. Anywho, they did testing in an IndyCar, so they may fill in possibly for the rest of the season. And then you get to Chip Ganassi Racing. Jimmy Johnson, the 7-time Cup champion who ran his first year last year on only the road courses, is going full-time, which means that Tony Kanaan, who is contracted to run all the oval races in the 48 this year, is only running the Indy 500 in a 5th Chip Ganassi car. So hopefully Jimmy builds on last year. He impressed at tracks he is familiar with towards the end of last year at Laguna Seca, and he did better at the Indy Road Course the second time they visited. So he's looking to have a better year, obviously. And then it's a little sad that Tony Kanaan is out of those oval deals, but at the same time, at least he gets to run the 500. Dale Coyne Racing has a new partner, HMD Motorsports, joins with David Malukas. Malukas' father, I believe, runs HMD, so again, not a surprise to see their name there with Malukas at Dale Coyne. However, Malukas finished 2nd to Kyle Kirkwood in Indy Lights last year, so it's not a bad driver selection for Coyne, who needs that partner to run that second car. And then Vassar Sullivan, who had been a partner of Dale Coyne for multiple years, I think it was 4 or 5 years now, departs and is rumored to be fielding their own entry at some point down the line, but nothing's been announced there yet. And then Rick Ware Racing, who helps fund the first seat at Dale Coyne, brought in Takuma Sato, who left Rahal Letterman Lanigan. So obviously with a rookie and then a 2-time Indy 500 winner, I think Dale Coyne's actually going to have quite a strong year this year compared to last year, where Ed Jones in the Vassar Sullivan entry really kind of struggled throughout the year, even though Roman Grosjean was extremely good. So I'm happy to see that Dale Coyne has found itself on solid footing going into this season. And then we have the Indy 500 specialist, Dreyer and Rainbold. Last year they had one entry in the 500 with Sage Karam, ran extremely well, finished, I believe, 7th or 8th. So extremely good for a small team like them. They're expanding to 2 entries in the 500, bringing in Santino Ferrucci, who raced part-time last year with Rahal Letterman Lanigan, and then ran about 7 or 8 races in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Ferrucci is extremely good on ovals, so I will not be surprised to see him not only make the field, but compete maybe for a top 5 on race day. And then Karam, obviously, is a dependable driver. Top 10 last year in the Indy 500. I could see him, again, getting another top 10 or a top 15, but more on that later. Ed Carpenter Racing announced that Connor Daly will go full-time with the team despite losing Air Force sponsorship. They got another sponsor that could cover, I believe it's a Bitcoin sponsor, so let's see how long that lasts. But for now, obviously, good news for Connor Daly, as this is his first time running full-time with Ed Carpenter, whereas last year he split time between Carpenter and Carlin when Max Chilton didn't run the ovals for Carlin. So that is good. And then Ed Carpenter, who usually runs the ovals for his team, will now run the 500, and he may run more ovals, but that has not been announced. Then we come to the newest team, or I guess the returning newest team to IndyCar, Juncos Hollinger. Juncos Racing has been in IndyCar previously, and they are a powerhouse in Indy Lights since the mid-2000s, but they were unable, they pulled out after the pandemic started, but got a new partner in Brad Hollinger, who was a former Williams partner in F1, so he brought some funding to them, and then they brought in British driver Callum Ilott to run full-time. This team ran the final 3 races last year with Ilott, so they should be hopefully top 15, more competitive this year, but it's nice to see them return to full-time action for the first time since 2018. And then we come to the defending Indy 500 winners, Meyer Shank Racing, who are expanding to 2 cars with Elio Castroneves, who won last year's Indy 500 and ran part-time with them, coming back full-time for the first time, I believe, since 2016 or 2017. And then Simon Pagenaud has left Team Penske, at which he won a championship and a Indy 500, and is moved over to the Meyer Shank Honda, and he's also running full-time. Rahal Letterman Lanigan is next. They are expanding to 3 full-time cars after having 2 full-time cars last year with a third car that ran the second half of the season with the various drivers testing it out. They have 2 new drivers. Jack Harvey switches from Meyer Shank, and Christian Lundgaard comes from Formula 2 to join. Lundgaard had run, I believe it was 2 races for them last year, and he impressed on his debut at the Indianapolis GP, where he qualified, I believe, in the top 5, and then fell back a little during the race, but that's to be expected. And then Jack Harvey had a slightly disappointing year last year, but that was mainly due to some mechanical issues and some bad luck. But he's got the pace, and I bet he's going to be competing for podiums, if not the occasional win this year. And then Graham Rahal remains with the team. And then we have the only team that has downsized from last year. Team Penske's downsizing from 4 full-time cars to 3 this year due to Simon Pagenaud's departure. But the other 3 drivers are still the same. You have Josef Newgarden in the 2, Scott McLaughlin in the 3, and then Will Power in the 12. So that rounds up the field and its silly season. So far, the teams that have not announced anything that ran last year, Carlin has left the sport after partnering with Juncos Hollinger. But they announced that they're only going to keep one full-time car and not have a second car for the 500. So who knows? Carlin may do something, but at the moment they are out of the sport, which is kind of a shame. And then Top Gun Racing has not announced anything, but news has came out that R.C. Anderson, who attempted to make the Indy 500 with them, has departed from the team and is looking for some racing in other series. I believe he just got a deal with Rick Rowe Racing to go race in IMSA at Sebring. So who knows if he will return to IndyCar. And then the final team is Paterna Autosport, which ran a car out of the Penske stable last year for the Indy 500. The mostly women team did a fantastic job in their debut race, making the Indy 500, although they were kind of in the back of the pack, and ended up retiring due to, I believe it was an issue with the brakes. But they haven't announced anything either, and with it being close to the end of February already, it's unlikely they will announce anything. So with silly season being covered, we move on to the schedule. The schedule looks mostly the same as it did last year, but the notable changes are St. Petersburg and Long Beach return to their traditional dates. St. Petersburg, due to the pandemic, was moved to the second race of the season behind Barber Motorsports Park, but that has been switched back to the first race. And then Long Beach has returned to its traditional April date after being moved to the finale in September due to the pandemic. Texas loses a race, so Texas will only be a single race this year and is moved up to the second race of the year in March. But Iowa has rejoined the schedule after a year hiatus and will be a double header. So, yes, we've got 5 oval races and 12 road course races. And then, again, this all depends on if Toronto returns. It's on the schedule, hasn't been raced in 2 years at this point due to the pandemic, and it's still kind of in the air if it's going to be on the schedule because of COVID. When they released the TV schedule, this was the only race not even on cable television. If you want to watch Toronto, it's on Peacock streaming service, which is NBC's streaming service, who covers IndyCar. So that's still questionable whether that's going ahead or not, but for now, we'll put it on there because it is on the calendar. So coming to the season predictions, I have Rookie of the Year, Indy 500 pole, Indy 500 winner, the engine champion, so the manufacturer champion, the road course champion, the driver who has the most points on all of the road and street courses throughout the year, the oval champion, the same thing but on the ovals, and then the most improved driver, of which I'll talk about a few candidates before I pick my winner. So, Rookie of the Year, there are 6 rookies. There is 2 at AJ Foyt with Tatiana Calderon and Kyle Kirkwood. There is 1 at Andretti with Devlin DeFrancesco. There's 1 at Coyne with HMD, which is David Malukas. Let's see. There's Callum Ilott at Juncos Hollinger. And then there's Christian Lundgaard at Rahal. So if I had to pick one to be last, I think it'd be Calderon because she's only running the road courses. I think she's actually going to be relatively competitive. Not the slowest in that team, although I think Dalton Kellett will improve, I still think he'll be the slowest of that team, at least on road courses. So I think Tatiana Calderon will finish last. I then think Callum Ilott will finish last, as I think that team's really going to focus on just consistency and their reliability, and with him only having 3 races in IndyCar, I don't think his talent that he has, which is still pretty good. I mean, he was runner-up F2 champion 2 years ago. I think he'll drag that car higher than it should be in the points, but I don't think it'll be higher than Christian Lundgaard, who I have as my 4th place rookie. Lundgaard impressed in his debut, but I don't think he'll do very well on the ovals. He might even miss the 500, in my opinion, which is a double points race. So I think Lundgaard will will be ahead of Ilott throughout the season, but I don't think he'll be miles ahead. in terms of overall standings. I think in the race, in normal race conditions, he will beat him, but I digress. Third place, I have Devlin DiFrancesco. I think he's in the best equipment at Andretti. I think he's a solid driver, but I think he'll take a year to really get fully up to speed. And it's no slight on his talent. I think the top three are going to be quite close. And so I will reveal my Rookie of the Year now. I think it's going to be David Malukas. I think the Dale Coyne equipment is on par, if not better, than the AJ Foyt equipment, mainly due to the Honda engine. I think Honda at the moment has the stronger package, which kind of ruins my engine, my manufacturer champion, but that's the least important of these predictions, in my opinion. I think Malukas will have an extremely strong year. I believe he will be able to get those big results when it matters. That will kind of propel him over Kirkwood. I think Kirkwood's going to be more consistent throughout the year, but between the equipment difference and I think the getting familiar with the team, I think it will hurt him a bit more, as Malukas has some personnel that's coming with him from HMD Motorsports that I think is going to get him up to speed a bit quicker. I haven't watched Malukas or Kirkwood on ovals, so I think that might change depending on the ovals. But I think Malukas, I'm going to go a bit different. I'm going to pick Malukas to win Rookie of the Year. Now, Indy 500 pole, it's kind of a crapshoot, but I'm going to go with Alexander Rossi. I think Alexander Rossi will have a much improved season compared to last year. But, and I think it's going to highlight, the highlight's going to be this pole. I'm not picking him as my winner, but I think he's going to outduel Scott Dixon, Castroneves, Pagenaud, probably Newgarden, from the Chevys. I don't see very many Chevys making. Connor Daly, I think, will make the top 9, who do a shootout for pole. But I don't think the Chevys are going to have it. I think they're going to be better in the race, but I don't think they're going to do it. I think Simon Pagenaud will win his second Indy 500. Pagenaud finished highest of all the Chevys last year in a Penske car that was not as good as it has been in years past. So I think Pagenaud will win the 500 in the Meyer-Shank car with that Honda engine. So Shank will go back-to-back, except with their other driver. And then the engine champion is Honda. I think Honda will have the mark of Chevy throughout the year, and I think Honda will win again. Road course champion, I was really going between 2 drivers for this. I think that, or 3 drivers. I think Pato O'Ward is a good shout. I think Alex Palou's a good shout. I think Newgarden and Herta are definitely the top 2, but then Rossi's going to have a better year. But I ended up going with Colton Herta. I think he's going to take his momentum from last year, in which his 3 wins, which was St. Pete, Long Beach, and Laguna Seca, were all road courses. I think he's going to be a bit more consistent this year. We're not going to see him crash out of Nashville like he did when trying to go for the win. And I just think he's going to have a better season, more consistent on those road courses. The Oval champion, Scott Dixon. I think Scott Dixon, despite not winning the Indy 500, which is double points, will be the Oval champ. He's probably going to win Texas, which is like his domination track. I probably expect him to get one of the wins at Iowa. Probably a top 5 finish at Indy. Last year he got screwed because of his car running out of fuel due to the timing of the caution. And so he fought back from a lap down, which I think he finished on the lead lap, but kind of just took him out of the race. But I think he's going to dominate the ovals this year, which will obviously help him in the championship. But I think the field's so competitive that he won't win enough on some of the oval or the road courses. Anywho, most improved driver. So it's hard. This is the one that you can't calculate with numbers. I think Jimmy Johnson will improve a lot. But then again, he's in a Chip Ganassi car, and he's an experienced race car driver, even if this is only his second year of open wheel. So I think he should be better. I'd probably say definitely in the top 20, consistently fighting for top 15s. I think that Roman Grosjean with his ovals will improve. I think Scott McLaughlin, who's only in his second year of open wheel cars, will improve a lot. I think Alexander Rossi will have a bounce back year, but then again, I think he had a disappointing year last year, so I don't think that qualifies him for most improved driver. So my most improved driver is Connor Daly, who finally has the stability of running with the same team the entire season, at least in the last few years. I think that will help him immensely. Not bouncing back and forth between two different teams, two different crew chiefs, two different engineers, two different crews in general. Now he can have all of his data with one team, one crew, and really focus on improving. So I think Connor Daly will be the most improved driver of the 2022 season. Now we are going to move on to the Drivers' Championship prediction, as IndyCar doesn't have a team championship. They have a car championship, but that's typically the same as the driver, because your Drivers' Champion is typically a driver that drives full season. I don't think I've ever seen, when I was looking through the stats, a split car win the car championship, so I'm just going to ignore that. So, Drivers' Championship, we're going to do the top 10. Number 10, Elio Castroneves for Meyer-Shank. I don't think he's past his prime. I still think he's at the end of his prime. I think he's still a great driver. I mean, you don't win 4 Indy 500s without being a great driver. I think he could possibly win his 5th this year. But his part-time schedule with Shank last year was disappointing after the 500 win. But I think he'll return to form this year with it being a full-time year. But I don't see him, with the strength of this field, cracking more than 10th place. Will Power, I don't know if you could call this a disappointing season because of how competitive the field is. I think he'll be competitive. I think he'll win a few races. I just don't think the Penske car is going to be there enough, especially on those ovals. So I'm going to have Power in 9th. Graham Rahal, another top 10 finish. I think he'll lead his team. And again, I think Rahal will finally break his winless streak. I think he'll get a win. But I don't think he will be consistent enough to crack the top 5, which again really isn't his fault. His team is attempting to break into that top pack of Ganassi, Penske, Andretti. And may catch Penske, but I don't think they're going to break the top 2. And this is kind of harsh. Alex Palou down in 7th. I don't even think it's going to be because of like a champion hangover or championship hangover. I just think last year was such an amazing season from him that it's naturally going to take a step back. I think he's going to be competitive. Again, I think he's going to win a few races. I don't think he's going to win the championship, sadly. But I still think it's going to be a strong season. I think he's a dark horse for the Indy 500. Is he really a dark horse? He was 2nd last year, could have won, but Elio made the experienced move with, I believe, 2 laps to go, getting past Palou. So I have him 7th, and this is why I considered putting Rossi for the most improved driver, although my criteria doesn't exactly fit. I think Rossi will have a 6th place finish this year, but be much more competitive. And I think that's impressive considering the strength of the field has gone up. I think Rossi's going to get a few wins, break that streak, as he had a really bad year last year. An extremely bad year. And then so going to 5th place, Pato O'Ward, who finished, I want to say 3rd, but it could have been 4th due to getting knocked out of the last race. Anywho, he led the championship at parts. He was 2nd place for most of the season. Came out of nowhere, really. I mean, not nowhere, but he was extremely competitive for a team that hasn't been extremely competitive in the past. So I think he's going to be more consistent this year. I think he's going to improve on ovals. I just, again, with the field, I don't think he'll be there at the same pace that he was last year. So I have him in 5th. Then we have Simon Pagenaud. So I think Pagenaud will have a much better year this year with Shank as he's out of Penske. Not that saying that Penske was bad. I just think Penske was a bit let down by those engines last year. And I think that new team vibe plus my prediction of him winning the 500, which is those extra bonus points, propels Pagenaud to a top 5 finish in the championship. So, yeah. And then moving on to third place, Scott Dixon. I mean, he's Mr. Consistency, the 7-time champ. I don't think he's going to win his 8th. I think he's going to stay at 7, but I think he's going to be there quietly throughout the season. He may pick up, like I said, I predicted him to win the Oval Championship. So I think if he's going to win this year, it's going to be on the ovals. And I think he'll just lurk on those podiums on the road courses, but still an impressive season, putting him in third place. And then second, I have Josef Newgarden, who's going to finish runner-up again, the 2-time champion. I think will have another great season, be fast, be rapid at all the road courses, be good at the ovals. I don't think he's going to win it, and I think that man is going to be Colton Herta. I know it's kind of, in my mind, an obvious pick, a cop-out. I mean, he won the last 2 races of last year. We're going to St. Petersburg, at which he dominated last year. And he improved on the ovals. I mean, he didn't do extremely well, but I think he improved to a point where his pace in general is going to carry him to a championship. And I think that goal of maybe reaching F1 with the announcement of Andretti going to F1 or hoping to go to F1 in 2024, I think Herta's realizing that, hey, I'm getting into my prime. You know, we won 3 races last year, should have won more, had some dumb mistakes like at Gateway, like at Nashville. I believe he got caught up in the accident at Barber on the first lap last year through no fault of his own. I think he was in the lead at Detroit for one of the races, but then strategy and luck just went against him. I mean, I just think he's gonna nail it this year. And despite this top 10, and I think honestly this top 10, well, IndyCar is 50 points for a win, 40 for second place. I would not be surprised to see going into Laguna Seca, which is the final race, the top 5 competing for the championship. I think it's going to be that good of a season. It's going to be better than last season. I think the quality of the field has just jumped massively. And I think any one of these top 10, I mean, you can't, I mean, maybe Graham Rahal's the weakest here, but I think he's improved. I think anyone in this top 10 can win a championship. And there's names that I think should be in the top 10 that aren't. Like, I think Takuma Sato's going to have a better year. I think Jack Harvey's going to have a better year. I think Connor Daly's going to have a better year. Rinus VeeKay, Scott McLaughlin. I mean, there's your top 15. And sure, that's leaving out David Malukas. And that's how crazy this IndyCar field is. That those 5 drivers that I just named, who I believe all of them have won. No, Scott McLaughlin hasn't won. Neither has Harvey, but they've came close. McLaughlin had finished second place on his first ever oval start last year at Texas. I mean, the kid's talented. He's a 2-time Australian Supercars champion. I mean, he's gonna win a race this year. Scott McLaughlin will. And I don't even have Roman Grosjean. Oh my Lord, I don't even have Roman Grosjean in the top 10. I mean, holy be like, it's gonna be insane. I mean, yeah. Whew. Looking at this now, man, how did I leave Grosjean out? I don't know. Wow, it's gonna be intense. I think if you are a motorsports fan and you've been disillusioned with NASCAR or IndyCar and you're not a fan of sports car racing, I think IndyCar is where it's at. I'm falling in love with it. I'm going to the Indy 500 this year. I'm hoping to go to Mid-Ohio. I'm going to try to go as many races as I can for all race series, obviously, but I think IndyCar is becoming my favorite. The gimmicks aren't there in IndyCar. The racing's hard. Sure, it's a spec, air quotes, series. Do I wish they had another chassis manufacturer? Yes, but they might have a third engine manufacturer come in. The 2 manufacturers they have are long-term partners. Roger Penske's in charge of the series, so I have got faith that the new TV deal they got is fantastic. I believe over half the races are on network television with one TV partner, NBC, which is insane. So that means more people will be able to watch it. They've got the most of the remainder of the races on USA Network, which is in most basic cable packages, at least in the United States. And sure, they've got one race on Peacock, but that's Toronto, and that who knows if that race is even going to happen. But I mean, IndyCar's in a fantastic spot. So anywho, getting off my soapbox, let's move on to this week's race, the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on NBC. I'm really looking forward to it. I've got to work, sadly, so I'll be watching it on tape delay, but I'm pumped. So it's the 18th race at the track for the IndyCar series. There was racing in St. Petersburg as late as as early as the 1980s, with Trans Am, which is a sports car series, and then Champ Car made one appearance in 2003 at the track, which is a 1.8 mile track, so they will be running 100 laps of it. There are 14 turns, and the course itself is half airfield, half street circuit. The start-finish straight is on one of St. Petersburg's airports, and then it winds a bit through the streets, coming back to the airport. Last year's winner was Colton Herta, who absolutely dominated the race. I believe he led over 85 laps. Second place was Josef Newgarden, who had a good day. Was trying to catch him towards the end, but didn't manage to do so. So let's do some quick predictions. So I'm going to predict pole and then the podium. Pole, I have Pateau O'Ward. I think he's going to come out of the gate again, win that pole first lap, declare his intentions. But then, as we saw last year, he made a few mistakes at this course. Street courses typically haven't been favorable to him, with the exception of actually his first win, which was at Detroit last year. But I think he's going to fall back a bit, which then heading onto the podium. In third place, we have the feel-good story of Takuma Sato, finishing third for Dale Coyne and Rick Ware Racing. Coyne is traditionally good here at St. Pete, with Sebastian Bourdais winning, I believe, 3 times for Coyne within the last 6 years now. So I think Sato will be good. I think he'll be a little bit fortunate, but use that experience he has to get into the podium positions. Second place, I have Josef Newgarden finishing runner-up again, and he will be doing that to the same man who won last year. I think Colton Herta will come out, not dominate this race. I think a little bit of luck will have to come into it with Pateau O'Ward, Pagenaud, Dixon, all of those strong drivers, Pagenaud, competing for the win. I think Herta will just get it due to a caution. Well, not just due to a caution. He'll drive brilliantly once he has the lead, but I think he'll get that lead by a caution and then not run away with it, but hold off Josef Newgarden for the win to open the season. So that wraps up my IndyCar season preview here on the Wargiven Racing podcast. My little preview for St. Petersburg. I think it's going to be a great season. I watched last year. I loved it. Fell in love. It convinced me to get Indy 500 tickets for this year, which I'm an idiot. I should have been trying to go previously. But, yeah, I think it's going to be impressive. I think IndyCar will see numbers rise in TV audience. I don't think you'll reach NASCAR when NASCAR hits NBC later on in the year. I think you'll be close, and I think that's a great sign for IndyCar. Not a negative for NASCAR, but a great sign for IndyCar, who I think is growing. You can see that with the car counts. There's projected maybe 20, at some races, 30 cars on a non-Indy 500 event. That's insane. There might be, I think, 36 cars at the Indy 500. I mean, right now you have the 26 full-time cars plus the 2 Dreyer and Rainbow cars, plus the 3rd Arrow McLaren car, plus the 5th Chip Ganassi car. So you're already up to, and then you've got Ed Carpenter. So now you're up to 31 cars. And then there's obviously some more in the background that will be Marco Andretti. So now you're at 32 cars, and that's just confirmed. I mean, obviously teams are still trying to put together stuff, and obviously when that happens, I'll let you know as quick as I can. But yeah, that's the preview for this year's IndyCar season. I can't wait. I think it's be better than last year. I think even though the Dallara chassis is getting older, and this is the last year for their engines, I think this year's going to be great. And I mean, the sheer amount of competition. I mean, when I was again listing the top 10, the fact that names like Roman Grosjean, Scott McLaughlin, Takuma Sato, who else did I mean, Jack Harvey, Connor Daly, Rinus VK. I mean, I think Christian Lundgaard would be quite impressive in his first full season. I mean, those names didn't even crack the top 10. And again, I think the championship won't be decided till Laguna Seca. I honestly think that. I think Laguna Seca is going to be epic because you're going to have 4 or 5 drivers going into that championship. And if there isn't 4 or 5 drivers, that one means that one driver is super competitive or super dominant, which I think you could see with Colton Herta this year. Or, those drivers 2 through 5 have just taken themselves out and cost themselves points in terms of against each other. While the driver who wins the championship's just finishing every race in 3rd place or 2nd place, maybe getting a win every now and then. But, I mean, I think this season will just add to the argument further of why IndyCar should go up to a 20-race schedule. I don't think higher than 20 is a good idea, but I certainly think 20 races is the target, should be the target. I think you should try to add a few more ovals. Obviously, safety is the most important thing. So I don't think you should go back to Pocono. I think if you're going to go back to Michigan or Fontana, you need to heavily look at the safety features, not only of your car, but of the track. I would like to see them maybe return to New Hampshire, maybe with a partnership with NASCAR, Miami, Kansas, Chicagoland, Kentucky, not Las Vegas, not after what happened with Dan Weldon and the fact it's gotten steeper. Maybe Phoenix. I'm trying to think of other low banked ovals. Milwaukee, if you can resurrect the Milwaukee Mile. Richmond. I mean, I think you've got a ton of potential there, and I think Roger Penske will improve the series. And I think the consistency that Penske brings is good for IndyCar. But that's enough of me rambling. Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Who you think's going to win, who's going to win the Indy 500, and we'll compare it at the end of the year. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard and you made it this far, feel free to give a like, a comment, and a subscribe. And feel free to check out the other podcasts on the channel as well as my custom fast car season, all of which is in playlists on the channel. Thank you so much. Have a great night, and cheers.